Have you ever met someone who seemed perfectly nice, only to later realize they weren't who you thought they were? It's a common experience, and it's not always easy to recognize when someone is toxic. Toxic people can hide their true selves behind a mask, making it hard for others to see the red flags at first. I once had a roommate who turned out to be a toxic person. In the beginning, he seemed friendly and normal, but as time went on, his true nature came out. He stole things, lied, and took advantage of everyone around him. The problem was that we didn't see the warning signs early enough. If we had known what to look for, we could have avoided a lot of trouble. Toxic people often show subtle signs that, if you learn to recognize them, can save you from a lot of drama and pain later on. In this guide, we'll go over 8 hidden traits that toxic people often have. These traits might not be obvious right away, but once you know what to look for, you'll be able to spot toxic behavior much sooner. Keep in mind that nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes from time to time, but if someone consistently shows these behaviors, it's a red flag. Toxic people secretly have these 8 horrible traits. 1. Cowardice, the root of many problems. Let's start with the first trait, cowardice. A lot of people think of a coward as someone who is simply afraid of danger, but there's more to it than that. Cowardice can also show up in less obvious ways. Toxic people are often too scared to face the truth, take responsibility, or be honest. It takes courage to be a good, virtuous person because doing the right thing is often difficult. What does cowardice look like? Cowardice can take many forms. For example, a toxic person might refuse to admit when they've done something wrong. Instead of owning up to their mistakes, they lie or shift the blame onto someone else. They avoid uncomfortable conversations or challenges, preferring to take the easy way out. Here are a few signs of cowardice you might notice in a toxic person. Lack of self-reflection. They rarely think about their own actions or how they affect others. Rudeness or cruelty. Sometimes, instead of facing a problem, they lash out at others. Indecisiveness. They avoid making decisions because they don't want to deal with the consequences. Inertia. They don't take action, even when they know they should, because they're afraid of failure or confrontation. Why cowardice matters. Cowardice is at the core of many other toxic behaviors. When someone lacks the courage to be accountable, they end up lying, cheating, and manipulating to protect themselves. This can lead to a lot of pain for the people around them. That's why it's so important to recognize cowardice early on. It's often the first sign that someone might be toxic. 2. A lack of disgust, what it says about their morality. Have you ever noticed how some people don't seem bothered by things that should be disgusting or disturbing? This can be a warning sign. Studies have shown that people who get easily disgusted are often more moral. In contrast, those who don't react to disgusting or shocking things might lack a sense of right and wrong. Why disgust is linked to morality. Disgust is a natural reaction that helps us avoid harmful things. For example, feeling disgusted by dirty or spoiled food helps protect us from getting sick. But disgust also plays a role in our moral lives. When we see something that's morally wrong, like cruelty or injustice, it can make us feel disgusted. People who don't get disgusted easily might not have strong moral boundaries. They might be more likely to lie, cheat, or betray others because they don't feel the same emotional reaction to wrongdoing. How to recognize this trait? One way to spot this trait is to pay attention to how someone reacts to disgusting or immoral situations. If they see something that most people would find disturbing but don't seem affected, it might be a sign that their moral compass is off. Of course, this isn't a foolproof method. Some people, like doctors or police officers, are used to seeing disturbing things as part of their job. But if this lack of reaction comes alongside other warning signs, it's worth paying attention to. 3. Risk-taking without thought, impulsiveness and irresponsibility. Taking risks isn't always a bad thing. In fact, it can sometimes be a sign of bravery. But toxic people often take risks for the wrong reasons. They're not being courageous, they're being impulsive and reckless. They act without thinking about the consequences, and their behavior can hurt others. The difference between courageous risk-taking and recklessness. Brave people take calculated risks. They weigh the pros and cons and think about how their actions will affect others. Toxic people, on the other hand, act on impulse. They might lie, cheat, steal, or betray someone without thinking it through. When things go wrong, they often blame others for the consequences of their reckless behavior. Warning signs of recklessness. You can often spot a reckless person by the drama they create. They jump from one bad decision to the next, leaving a trail of chaos behind them. If someone is constantly getting into trouble, it might be a sign that they're not thinking about the consequences of their actions. 4. Hurting others when stressed, the emotional punching bag. Toxic people often take their stress out on others. When they're having a bad day, they lash out at the people around them instead of dealing with their emotions in a healthy way. This is a sign of emotional immaturity and selfishness. Why do they do it? Hurting others when stressed shows a lack of empathy and self-control. Instead of managing their emotions, they use others as an emotional punching bag. They might yell, insult, or treat people badly just because they're in a bad mood. This behavior is never justified, and it's a sign of deeper issues like an inability to take responsibility for their feelings. How to spot this behavior? Pay attention to how someone treats others when they're stressed or upset. If they consistently take their frustration out on those around them, it's a red flag. Mature, responsible adults deal with their emotions in a healthy way instead of hurting others. 5. A history of troubled relationships. Toxic people often have a long trail of broken relationships behind them. This is because their behavior eventually drives others away. Whether it's friends, family, or romantic partners, they can't maintain healthy relationships because of their emotional immaturity. What troubled relationships reveal? When someone has a history of falling out with people, it's usually a sign that they're the common problem. Toxic people often blame others for their relationship issues, but if every relationship they've had has ended badly, it's worth considering that they might be the issue. How to spot this pattern? Ask about someone's past relationships. If they constantly talk about how crazy or toxic their exes were, it might be a sign that they're the toxic one. People who are emotionally mature take responsibility for their part in a failed relationship instead of blaming everyone else. 6. Liking their own social media posts, a sign of desperation. This might seem like a small thing, but it can reveal a lot about someone's need for validation. People who like their own social media posts are often trying too hard to get attention. They might be overly concerned with their image or desperate for approval. What this says about their personality. Liking your own post can be a sign of insecurity or narcissism. Toxic people often crave validation and will go to great lengths to get it, even if it means inflating their own social media presence. This behavior can be a red flag that they care more about appearances than genuine connections. How to recognize this trait? It's easy to spot this behavior on social media. If someone consistently likes their own posts or seems overly concerned with their online image, it might be a sign that they're insecure or self-centered. 7. Overly orderly and controlling. Perfectionism without empathy. Being organized and orderly is generally a good thing, but when someone takes it to the extreme, it can be a sign of a deeper issue. Toxic people who are obsessed with control often lack empathy for others. They want everything to be perfect and will go to great lengths to make sure it is, even if it means hurting others in the process. The dark side of perfectionism. Perfectionists who are also low in empathy can be very difficult to deal with. They're intolerant of mistakes, both their own and others. This can lead to controlling behavior, where they try to micromanage everything and everyone around them. They might criticize or belittle others for not meeting their high standards, which can create a toxic environment. How to spot this trait? If someone is extremely orderly but also harsh or critical of others, it might be a sign that they're more concerned with control than with kindness. Pay attention to how they react when things don't go perfectly. If they become overly upset or start blaming others, it's a red flag. 8. Stinginess, a sign of cowardice and selfishness. Stinginess is about more than just being cheap with money. It's a sign of someone who is unwilling to give of themselves, whether it's time, effort, or resources. Toxic people who are stingy often lack the courage to be generous, and this stinginess can show up in other areas of their lives as well. What stinginess reveals about a person? Stingy people are often selfish and cowardly. They withhold their resources because they're afraid of losing something, whether it's money, time, or emotional energy. This same fear prevents them from being generous in other areas of life. such as offering help or support when someone needs it. How to recognize stinginess. Pay attention to how someone behaves in situations where they could be generous. Do they offer to help, or do they hold back? Are they willing to share their resources, or do they always keep things for themselves? Stinginess is a sign of deeper issues, like cowardice and selfishness. So it's important to recognize this behavior early on. Conclusion. Spotting the subtle signs of toxicity. Toxic people often hide their true selves behind a mask, making it difficult to see their toxic traits right away. However, by paying attention to subtle signs like cowardice, a lack of empathy, and irresponsible behavior, you can start to recognize toxic people before they cause harm. Remember, it's important not to judge someone based on one or two mistakes. We all have bad days and make poor decisions from time to time. But if you notice a consistent pattern of toxic behavior, it's time to be cautious. By learning to spot these 8 traits, you can protect yourself from toxic people and avoid unnecessary drama, pain, and heartbreak in the future. This structure can be significantly expanded by adding more detailed explanations, real-life examples, studies that support the points, and more scenarios of how these traits manifest in everyday life.